Hi, y'all. I'm Lawyer Lee. I'm a 30-year trial lawyer, a graduate of Harvard Law School. My goal is to explain to you what the heck happened in the Alec Baldwin case in 20 minutes or less, which is pretty short for a lawyer. So while he was on the set filming the movie Rust, Alec Baldwin was running through blocking for a scene. He was using a real gun as a prop. The movie production company had hired a 24-year-old woman named Hannah Gutierrez Reed as the armorer. Her job was to take care of the guns and train the actors to use them. But in the middle of the scene, Alec Baldwin's gun went off and killed cinematographer Halyna Hutchins. And it also injured director Joel Souza. Baldwin claimed he never pulled the trigger, that the gun went off after he only cocked it. Now, from the beginning, Baldwin and the armorer, Hannah Gutierrez Reed, wanted to know whether someone had sabotaged the set. No live ammunition was supposed to be on the set at all, ever. The plan was to use only blanks and dummy rounds. So, how did live rounds come to be on the set of Rust, much less inside guns that were actually being used by the actors? When investigators searched the set, they found five more live bullets mixed in with the dummies. They were nearly indistinguishable to somebody not trained. At the bottom of the bullet, if you turned it over, or at the bottom of the round, as I'm told it's called, then there was a dot on the bottom that looked silver instead of sort of a gold or copper color. And that was really the only difference between them. A special prosecutor, Carrie Morrissey, was brought on board to try the armorer, Hannah Gutierrez Reed, and she was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter in April and sentenced to 18 months in prison. She's serving that sentence now. Morrissey moved on to actor Alec Baldwin, who had fired that fatal shot. He went on trial this past week, also charged with involuntary manslaughter and also facing the possibility of 18 months in prison. But on Friday, the case against Baldwin spectacularly exploded. By the time the dust cleared at the end of the day, one of the prosecutors had resigned. The other found herself actually testifying from the stand. And the judge, in the end, dismissed the case against Alec Baldwin with prejudice, meaning the prosecution cannot refile it against him. Now, to understand just what happened, I need to take you back to the trial of Hannah Gutierrez Reed, the trial of the armorer. During the trial, a retired police officer named Troy Teskey walked into the courthouse to turn in what he claimed was evidence in the Rust case. He handed over live bullets, ultimately at the police station. Most of us would call them bullets, but I understand the actual official word should be round. That's what they should be called. So, the reason these bullets were important goes back to the issue about whether the set of Rust was sabotaged. A man named Seth Kinney supplied guns and dummy rounds and blanks to be used on the Rust set. Baldwin's lawyer claims that Seth Kinney wanted to get Gutierrez Reed, that 24-year-old armorer, fired. Seth Kinney did admit on the stand Friday that he thought she was doing a horrible job as armorer. Baldwin's team wants to imply that Seth Kinney was the person who slipped the live round onto the set, that it wasn't Gutierrez Reed. Troy Teskey was close friends with Hannah Gutierrez Reed's father, who is himself a famous armorer to the stars in Hollywood. The rounds that Teskey was bringing in came from Seth Kinney's stock. And the defense says they look identical to the live rounds that were found on the set of Rust. So these could be compared to what was found on the set of Rust and potentially linked back to Seth Kinney. Now, the prosecution completely disagrees with that. Prosecutor Morrissey insists that these rounds look entirely different from the live ones that were on the Rust set. And in testimony Thursday, the crime scene tech said the same thing. But at the Friday hearing, the rounds were actually produced. And the lead investigator admitted that what the crime scene tech had said was false, that the rounds do look alike. Here's what she said.
The third one from the left still looks similar to dummies.
on record.
Yes.
You were here for this testimony in this courtroom. And let me ask you, Ms. Popple, the ammunition that the Good Samaritan, Mr. Teskey, the close friend of Hannah Gutierrez's dad, that ammunition that he brought into you after the conviction, you still have it? Answer, yes. Question, you can bring it in here and you can show it to the jury, right? Answer, yes. And they can see for themselves that it does not match the live ammunition from the set of rust, correct? Yes. And that it is obvious. Just when you look at it, it is not. Yes. Do you remember that testimony that you were sitting here for?
Yes, I do.
And that turns out to be completely false, doesn't it?
You're correct.
If the rounds look alike, that means that they could have come from Seth Kinney and would give some fuel to the defense argument that maybe someone, maybe even Kinney himself, sabotaged the set of rust. But instead of disclosing those bullets to Hannah Gutierrez Reed or to Baldwin, the defense filed them under a completely separate case number, not the Rust case number, and they were never produced to the defense. The prosecution team had three arguments for why they believed the bullets were not relevant. The first was that they weren't similar, as you heard earlier. The lead investigator also said that she did not believe the bullets were related to the case because she didn't personally talk to the witness, that she was still trying to get hold of him. Now, the crime scene tech, however, had actually talked to the witness. So here's how that testimony went during the hearing.
No way of knowing that the man who was on speakerphone with you talking to Seth Kennedy, the man whose screenshots you received, the man who showed up at the Hannah Gutierrez retrial, the man who walked into your precinct talking about the Rust movie, you would have no way of knowing that it was related to Rust?
I would have need to come to the conclusion myself that it could have been tied back to Rust. There's been many people throughout this investigation that state that they have evidence or testimony to give that wasn't in relation to what I was doing.
Under cross-examination, the lead investigator had to admit that Mr. Teskey told police when he handed the bullets over, the rounds over, that they were connected to the Rust case, and that actually was put into the police report, that he had claimed that.
Not only does this police report come into the very same sheriff's office, correct? Right? This is your police department, right?
Yes.
Okay. Not only does it say live rounds of ammunition that he believed to be connected to the Rust case, right? You
Yes.
saw that, right?
Yes.
Okay. Not only does he say it's the same batch that was at Seth Kenny's, right?
I mean, that's what it says there. I don't remember that statement in the video.
The lead investigator also said that she had repeatedly tried to call Mr. Teskey to confirm what he had to say. The defense was very skeptical about that testimony.
First you said you didn't know how it was connected, then you said nobody interviewed him, couldn't connect it, and then you said to this court that you followed up with Mr. Teskey, right?
Yes.
When you reached out, according to you, you were trying, moving heaven and earth to try to reach Mr. Teskey. Did you ever create a supplemental police report?
No.
Okay. Let's go on to the next thing, which is you testified on direct examination that you then, in the weeks, months, whatever that followed, you attempted to reach Mr. Teskey, correct?
Yes.
Well, there are no calls from you and your cell phone that you used for everything else in this case to Mr. Teskey during the weeks that you claim you were trying to reach him. Do you know that?
Okay, so that's my cell phone?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. There's also no phone calls in the days and weeks that you claim you were trying to reach him from the Santa Fe Sheriff's Office. There's no messages from any Santa Fe Police Department's phone in his phone records during that time period that you claim you were trying to reach him.
Yeah, but if I call, it's more than likely not going to come up from a no-caller ID.
That's a no-caller ID situation?
Yeah.
Okay.
As I mentioned, the prosecution cataloged these bullets, filed them under a completely different case number. Now, why is it a problem that they did that and that the defense was never shown these bullets or given this evidence in advance of trial? It's because of a U.S. Supreme Court case, Brady versus Maryland. In that case, and several that followed it, the United States Supreme Court ruled that prosecutors have a constitutional duty to disclose to the defendant any material exculpatory information in the prosecution's possession. What that means is if the prosecution has in its possession information, evidence that is favorable to the defendant, the prosecution has to hand it over to the defendant. When a Brady violation is discovered during trial, in other words, when the defendant is in the middle of trial, when he finds out that the prosecution withheld information, the court may declare a mistrial or take other actions against the prosecution, like, for example, prevent them from using certain evidence. On Friday, the defense claimed that these bullets were withheld and that it was a Brady violation, that they were favorable evidence and would have helped Alec Baldwin prepare his defense. Now, one of the two prosecutors agreed. She resigned Friday morning. And then on Friday evening, she was actually interviewed on News Nation. Here's what Erlinda Ocampo Johnson said. There were 3 rounds that looked very similar. So she affirmed they looked similar to the live rounds that were found on the set of Rust. Thinking as a defense attorney, I'm thinking the defense could have argued Hannah Gutierrez Reed was a great armorer. She was completely competent, and there was sabotage. So then at that point, potentially those 3 rounds do become potentially exculpatory. But the point is, it should have been turned over, close quote. Ocampo Johnson had only been on the case since April, but Carrie Morrissey, the primary prosecutor, had been on the case much longer. During the course of Friday's hearing, the lead investigator testified that Carrie Morrissey, the other special prosecutor, was directly involved in the decision to put the evidence under a separate case number. Here's how that evidence came out.
You and Pop will have a conversation about what to do with this ammo?
To my understanding, it was going to be put in evidence
Which evidence?
at the sheriff's office.
The Rust evidence?
No.
Why
Just-
not?
Just as far in our evidence section in the sheriff's office.
And why was that determination made?
As to why
Who
it
made it?
was.
Let me ask you, who made it?
These were discussions that were had with myself, with the supervisors at that time, and then with the prosecutors.
Were you the lead investigator?
Yes.
Okay. And you said, and with the prosecutors?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you all had discussions about what to do with what he dropped off.
Yes.
And you all agreed to put it in this separate file.
Yes.
When you say that there were discussions and the decision was made by all of you to put that ammo in a separate file, right? Is that correct? You said that?
Yes, ma'am.
Was Ms. Morrissey part of that discussion?
Yes.
Thank you.
Let me give the court an offer of proof, and if Mr. Spiro wants me to, I'll testify under oath.
You are going to testify.
Sure, absolutely, I'm happy to.
Despite the judge saying you are going to testify, in the end, neither the judge nor the defense lawyer asked the prosecutor to testify, but she insisted on taking the stand herself. Here's how that shook out at trial.
It doesn't matter to me whether you call yourself as a witness. It doesn't matter to the defense whether you call yourself as a witness. So if you're calling yourself as a witness, there's no one here that's requiring you to be called as a witness.
The information, everything that happened in this regard, especially as it pertains to me, needs to come out in the public.
All right, so you're calling yourself as a witness.
And I am, and it was my understanding that the court indicated to me previously that you wanted me to testify. I understand you've now changed your mind. I think it's a good idea if I do it.
So on the stand, Prosecutor Morrissey made the argument that she believed the rounds were not connected to the case, that they were not from the Rust set, that there was no need or reason to produce them to the defendant. But the judge was not buying it. The judge dismissed the case against Baldwin with prejudice, meaning that the prosecution cannot refile it. If you enjoyed the content, please hit the like button and subscribe for more.